welcome back. We're going to go ahead and get started so that we can make sure that we stay on schedule. So you guys are in for a real treat. I think selfishly, I think we saved the best for last. So maybe it's just because we thought at the end of the day, people are going to be tired. So you're going to be engaged. We're going to try to scare you first. That's going to wake everybody up, right? Our next speaker is Phil Ferraro. He is the managing director and global head of JP Morgan's cyber advisory program. He has a long history of serving as the chief information security officer for the U.S. Department of Defense in the intelligence community, which I think might mean CIA, but he's not able to confirm that. For the Federal Communications Commission, and for two other large Fortune 500 firms, and now he's with JP Morgan doing this. But prior to that, he served in the U.S. Army Special Forces as a Green Beret. So we thank you for your service. As we all know, the battlefield has changed quite a bit. From the physical engagements to cyberspace, right? Our military is dealing with this right now. And so is corporate America. And so are many of the companies that are here and many of your employees. And the attacks are relentless. He had plans to join us last night at dinner, and one of his clients was being attacked. And so it's real. It's all the time. I just pictured him with shields up last night fighting for one of his clients. So he holds a master's degree in information technology from the City University of Seattle, is an accomplished author and sought after international keynote speaker on cybersecurity. He has presented on Capitol Hill on advanced cyber threats to both Senate and congressional committees. And today it is our treat for him to address this audience, although it may not feel like a treat after he scares you about what's really going on that cyber battlefield. Will you please join me in welcoming Phil Ferraro?
All right, thanks, Troy. Appreciate it. All right, good afternoon, everybody. I will do my best, Troy, to try and scare everybody just a little bit, but I'm also going to give you some tips and things that we're going to talk about on how best to protect yourselves, your families, and of course, your businesses. And so, whoops, a little too fast here. And I'm supposed to be the techie in the room, right? All right, so I'll talk about these different topics here, maybe a couple of others. When I get through this, I want to open it up for questions and answers, and you know, any question you might have cyber related, even if it's not specifically addressed here, I'm happy to talk to you about that and give you my perspective on it. I throw our CEO's picture up there, Jamie Dimon, because Jamie's an amazing speaker, and I love listening to him speak at different events. And whenever he's asked about, you know, what he sees as the biggest threat to financial services, he's always going to talk about cybersecurity. But then he also says, you know, it's not just us in financial services. It's everybody that has to worry about this. And he is so correct. And I won't spend a lot of time on this next slide, but what I love about Jamie is that he puts his money where his mouth is, right? We spend over $12 billion every year in technology. And that not only supports our global infrastructure, but also to make sure that we have the latest and greatest products and services for all of our clients, right? So Jamie often says that we are a technology company that happens to be in financial services. But for me, the big number on here is that $700 million. That is how much we spend on cybersecurity every single year. And why is this important to you? Because as business leaders, you need to make sure that you think about cyber risk. I've heard a lot of talk about risk in the conference here. You got to think about cyber risk as business risk. The cyber attacks, and you'll see on the next slide, are just continuing, especially during the pandemic. They continue to grow exponentially. And I'm going to give you an example shortly of how a big organization that I think everyone in this room knows about and how they got cyber attacked. They weren't even the intended target. And I'll talk about that. That's why it's kind of important to you. For us, are we a big target? Absolutely. We're the biggest financial services organization in the world, or I'm sorry, in the country. Not yet the world. We're working on that. But we block over 150 million emails every single month. So in your businesses, you need to be thinking about having a technology in place to be able to block the emails. But anyways, I don't want to spend a lot of time on us. I want to talk to you about some things here. When we look at cybersecurity, right, we think of cybersecurity in 3 different areas: people, processes, and technology, right? You may have heard that before: people, process, and technology. And it's really important in cyber as well. So that big company I talked about, one of the big 3 of the credit reporting agencies, Equifax. Right? Has anybody heard about the Equifax cyber breach a few years ago? I would think that most of you probably had, because what happened in that breach is the cyber criminals weren't going out and saying, hey, let's attack Equifax and let's see if we can get some social security numbers. They were scanning. So what the cyber criminals do is they go out when they're scanning the internet. They have a few vulnerabilities that they know that they can exploit and take over a system. So they just run a scan on the internet. And if they find a vulnerability, they see if they can exploit it, get into that system and take it over. And that's what they did with Equifax. And either Equifax didn't know about that vulnerability on their website, or they just didn't fix it. The fix had been out for months in advance. So that's not a technology issue. That's a people and a processes issue. So I travel around the world. I meet with all our top clients, and I talk about what we're going to talk about today: how to best protect yourselves. We talk about how to protect the office, and we go into, for the senior people in the organization and even the IT providers. We talk about all the best practices in the office. We do payment and fraud awareness controls. And then we also do deep technical dives where we sit down with your IT providers. And we say, let's talk about things like firewalls, internet gateways, email server configuration settings, and all the most important IT and security technologies. So before we get into talking about how to protect yourselves, I'd like to talk about who the bad guys are. And the reason I do this is several years ago, I read this book. Some of you may have heard of it. It's called The Art of War. And it was written by a Chinese general named Sun Tzu. Now, the funny thing about the book is it was written 2,500 years ago. Now, I'm old, but I'm not quite that old, right? This book is so good. It's still in print today. My favorite quote from the book is, know the enemy and know yourself. In 100 battles, you'll never be defeated. And that's so appropriate in today's cyber warfare, that every one of us in this room is involved in cyber warfare. Whether you realize it or not, you are. As I mentioned earlier, the cyber criminals are just scanning the internet, looking for a vulnerability. Can they get into your business? Can they take it over? And we're going to talk about some of the ways to protect against that. But General Tzu was absolutely correct, even 2,500 years ago. He was saying that if we know who the bad guys are and how they're going to attack us, we can put up some defenses to make ourselves a hard target. Make that cyber criminal go to the soft target. Make it go to our competitors, anybody else but us, right? And so we're going to talk about those different things, but we categorize the hackers into 3 different groups. One end of the spectrum, we have hacktivists, very skilled hackers who hack in for ideological reasons. Maybe they don't like your policy. Maybe they don't like your logo. They're really active right now. They have been over the last couple of months, right? With the geopolitical situation in the world, cyber attacks have certainly escalated, particularly coming from Russia. And I can talk about that as well when I get to nation states. But these hackers, for ideological reasons, they've been attacking Switzerland because Switzerland didn't condemn the Russians. Everybody knows Switzerland is neutral, but they are. So they're going after their businesses within the country. Like they just attacked recently Nestle Corporation because they're headquartered in Switzerland. They've also attacked a couple of Russian banks, and they successfully have gotten into some Russian banks. Now, the other end of the spectrum, we have nation states, and it's not just Russia. It's China, Iran, North Korea. There's a number of countries around the world that have very sophisticated attack capabilities, right? And we've seen, particularly over the last couple of years during the pandemic, majority of us are working from home. We're accessing systems remotely. The hackers, they know this, right? They're taking advantage of knowing that people at home, employees at home, their systems are much less secure than they are within the business and the office environment, right? And so trying to exploit that ability to be able to get into your system. So the nation state attackers, they're not just going after other countries for political, military information. They also like to go after critical infrastructure. So financial services at the top of the list, but energy, oil, gas, transportation, and communications. But the biggest group that every one of us need to worry about is this group in the middle called cyber criminals. This is organized crime. It's big business. It's such big business. There was a report that came out in Q4 of last year that said that cybercrime is now the world's 3rd largest global economy after the US and China. Incredible. These cyber criminals are making tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars every single year. I sometimes think I got in the wrong side of cyber, but this is certainly big business, and it's increasing every single day. I'll talk about some of the other things that the cyber criminals are doing in just a second. Let's back up. So thinking about all these really, really skilled hackers, when you think about how are they getting into our systems, they have the technical capabilities. They can hack into our websites, our firewalls, or even our wireless routers. And I'll talk about those in just a second. But the easy way for them is just send out wave after wave of phishing email. All they have to do is get one person in your business to click on that link or open the attachment. And I know you guys have heard this before. Don't click on those links and open up attachments in email for people that you don't know. But I'm going to tell you today, I'm going to tell you why you should do that, right? When I was the chief information security officer in the tech industry, we had tens of thousands of really, really smart engineers and developers. And every time I was rolling out a security control or doing a town hall similar to this and talking about the security initiatives, they always want to know why. So I'm going to tell you the why today. But first, I'm going to tell you two tactics that we're seeing, especially over the last 2 years, have really, really stepped up. Now, let's say that these cyber criminals, they want to attack your organization. One of the first things they'll do is they will go out to social media. They'll go out to places. They love LinkedIn because everybody puts on LinkedIn, you know, where they work and what they do and all that. So they will find people in your organization as their targets. So let's say what they'll do is let's say you have an employee named John Kelly, and John spells his last name Kelly. So they will create an email address like a Gmail or something like that. And then they'll send it out individually to a number of people in the organization. And they'll say, hey, this is what we were talking about the other day. Click on the link. It's really cool. You're going to like it. If they get lucky and they actually get that fish to somebody that knows John, or better yet, somebody who's actually speaking to John, I'll say, oh yeah, it's John from his Gmail. I was talking to him the other day. Click, and then bad things happen. And I'll tell you about that in just a second. The other tactic that they're using is what we call lookalike domains. And what I mean by that is the domain is a part of the email address after the @ symbol. So yourbusiness.com. What the cyber criminals will do right before, usually a day or two before, maybe 3 days before they're going to attack you, they're going to go out, they're going to buy domain names that look very, very similar to your business. They'll insert a letter, they'll take out a letter, flip-flop a couple of letters, and then they'll use the name of somebody that's in your organization, typically somebody senior. And so then they send it out to people because they know that when people see it, they glance at the email address and say, oh yeah, that's John, all right? Or that's the CFO. And they click on the link. And so here's what happens when people click on the link. So in the IT and security world, we call this a drive-by download, drive-by download. So what does that mean? So somebody clicks on the link. When you click on the link, a web page is going to open up. Now, when that web page opens, that user doesn't have to do anything. They don't have to mouse over. They don't have to click on anything. They don't have to agree to download. The malware, and think of malware is short for malicious software. Think of malware like a virus. The malware downloads automatically to your system. And people have asked me so many times, like, so I clicked on the link and the page opened up and I looked at it, didn't quite look right, so I closed it out. Too late, they've already got you. So what happens in these drive-by downloads is the site, well, before I talk about that, the way the internet works, you go to any valid, legitimate website. And when you go to that website, all the picture files, the images on that page download to a temporary folder on your system because it makes the page render faster, makes the internet work a lot better. So the cyber criminals are pretty smart. They take their malware, they embed it into an image file. And so when somebody clicks that link and the page opens, it downloads automatically. The malware also is very smart. It looks around, says, yeah, I've been downloaded. Let me see if I can find a vulnerability to exploit on this system and take it over. And I'll talk about some ways to protect against that in a little bit. That is why we have to stress to all of our employees, don't click on those links, because that's what can happen. They don't have to do anything else after that. They click on it and your business can be compromised. And I know some of you are thinking about antivirus and all that. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But I don't know if any of you saw that there was a 60 Minutes report just a couple of days ago. Jenna Easterly, the head of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA or CISA, of the federal government. And they were talking about the increase of the attacks. They were talking about, you know, as I mentioned earlier, about taking advantage of workers working remotely. But the attacks have increased, and they've increased on American businesses. So we just have to be very, very vigilant nowadays and continue to be practice safe procedures in the office. Now, there's two other ways that I'll mention here. Well, phishing is the primary attack method because it's very easy to entice someone to click on the link. Oh, the other thing I'll tell you about phishing is, we always used to hear in the past that, oh, I can tell a phishing. It's probably written by a non-native English speaker. There's poor grammar, there's spelling mistakes, things like that. And yeah, we still see a lot of that today. Those are the script kiddies, the junior hackers. But these hackers making billions of dollars a year, they're hiring native English speakers who are designers and developers, and they're writing really, really well-written phish. So we have to be aware of that. Now, the other thing is, we're seeing probably a lot of you, I know I have received a lot of text messages over the last year from some number. I don't know where that phone number is, but it's purporting to be, could be from Chase Bank, or it could be from your healthcare provider or someone else, and trying to entice you to click on that link in the text message, right? We call this smishing. SMS is the old acronym for text messaging. It means simple message service, smishing, but it's text message phishing. So if you're getting things like that in text, again, don't click on the link. And then the other thing, we call it vishing. We have all these different words for it. Vishing is basically voice phishing. Somebody calling you up on the phone and purporting to be from someone else. Could be a healthcare provider, it could be a bank, it could be, FedEx, and there's a problem with your shipment and they need to get more information because they know that people are doing so much online shopping right now, right? So, matter of fact, at JP Morgan last month, we had 2 vishing attacks where the attacker, the person calling in, actually had the correct user ID, right? We have these unique numerical numbers, letters and numbers for employee IDs. They actually had the ID of one of our employees, and they're calling up and saying, hey, we've been trying to reach Mary, for days and we can't get a hold of her. Her SID is this. And, can you give us her, make sure we have the right phone number, name, address, email, all these type of information, right? Unfortunately, our people are well-trained and they said, yeah, we'll get back to you. They hung up the phone and then they reported it to us. But this happens, it happens all the time. And just because, whether it's in email or smishing or vishing, if someone purports to have information about you, it doesn't mean it's legitimate, right? If you have any doubts or suspicions whatsoever, close out the email, the text message, hang up the phone, and then go to the website directly and log in and look for the information, or call that organization up and say, hey, did you just try to reach out to me and talk to me, right? So again, err on the side of safety and be as secure as you can with all these, because this is what can happen. Something like ransomware. I'm sure you all heard of ransomware before. Anybody here on the East Coast? I know we're in the Midwest, but anybody on the East Coast? No? Okay. We got at least one. Good. And I make 2. So back in May of last year, there was, and you might have heard this in the news anyways, there's a Colonial Pipeline organization, right? Major provider of fuel services. And the entire East Coast of the US was impacted by this lack of availability, gas prices spiking really high, almost as high as they are today. But they were hit with a ransomware attack. They ended up having to pay $4.4 million to be able to get access back to their system. So ransomware can happen in a lot of ways. It typically starts with that one user clicking on that link and the malware comes in, they get into your organization, and they may stay hidden for days, weeks, even months before they finish the attack. And while they're on your network, right, they clean up their tracks of where they were at. They create what we call backdoors. So ground zero, the person where they initially got in, they might even leave that system completely and put entryways for them to get back in other places of the organization, right? Because let's say that person, they close their laptop at the end of the day, or maybe they go on vacation, they want other ways to be able to get back in the organization. And so what they do is, while they're in your network, they're looking around for your most sensitive information. It could be customer list, legal information, pricing list, whatever it might be. And then when they find that information, a lot of times, especially the more organized cyber criminals, they'll steal a copy of that data because they want to try and use that to say, hey, if you don't pay us, if you think you're going to restore from backup, we're going to publish all this information. And they'll send you a screenshot of the information that, that was stolen. And then that's where you have to make that business management decision. You have to think about, okay, if that information is released, is it bad to us? Is there going to be a lot of brand and reputation damage? Is it going to open us up to class action lawsuits for losing personally identifiable information, personal health information. So PHI sells for at least 5 times more than PII on the dark web, right? For some reason, the cyber criminals, they like personal health information. Very, very important to them. And so anyway, so there's a lot of things that your IT guys need to do. Obviously, they have to do backups. Normally, you want to do backups anyways. We encourage you to do multiple backups, do them in a cloud environment, right? So in case there's a problem with one, you've got that other one. I've talked to a lot of clients over the last couple months where what they're doing is they're going very old school. They're backing up to a drive or a server, and as soon as they finish that backup, they unplug it from the network. It's totally non-networked. It's a little bit more cumbersome, but it's definitely the most secure way to go. So you definitely want to do that. I think I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the number of emails, inbound emails that we block every month. You have to have some type of spam filtering on all your inbound, emails. So definitely your IT providers need to be able to make sure that you have at least one system that's filtering all your email. And if you're using, Microsoft and Gmail, they're both great, but from a filtering perspective, not quite there. There's a lot of third-party companies out there that are really good. In fact, we use 2, right? We use 2 different brands in a row. So all of our inbound email hits that first one, it filters out most of it. Then whatever gets through that, it is caught by the second one. Very rarely do employees in our organization, we have, 270, 280,000 employees. They rarely see a phish or spam email in their inbox, unless it's from me sending out email to do testing. So the other thing to think about is in your disaster recovery plan. Think about whether it's ransomware or it might be just any other. I mean, in a normal disaster recovery plan, you're planning for natural disasters. Maybe it's tornadoes. Where I live, it's hurricanes. Out west, it's fires. Whatever it might be, you want to include ransomware or cyber breach in that. Do we contact the FBI? Do we pay the ransom? Right? And ransoms can be, I rarely see them tens of thousands of dollars anymore. They're typically 6, 7 figures at least. And it all depends, the amount of the ransom just depends on how much money that they think they can exploit from your business, right? How much revenue is your organization doing? And so just a few things to think about on the ransomware side. What I'd like for all of you to do, and even for your employees, is to be more anonymous online, right? I would like to see that you do not give away your information to the cyber criminals. You probably wonder, how would I give my information to the criminals? Anybody have 2 or more email addresses with first and last name in there? I know I do. I've got a couple of them, right? So for our business email, it has our first and last name. Perfectly fine, that's great. But keep your business email only for business communications. Do not use your business email that has your first and last name in there or first initial last name for all kinds of things, subscriptions, signing up for the Wall Street Journal or Uber, Lyft, hotels, airlines, and all these things, because so many of these businesses have been hacked. A good example of that is right before the pandemic, big international hotel chain, JW Marriott, hacked again, second time in 2 years. Because these type of businesses are a wealth of information. And what the cyber criminals do is they start going through all these accounts that they've stolen. They start going through one by one, and they start Googling the names. They find the name high net worth individual, boom, high up on the target list. Or maybe they find a business that does a lot of revenue, financial transactions, or maybe has a lot of PHI, right? And now they have somebody in that business that they can go after, right? And so that's where they can also set you up for an attack. So keep your business email for business communications. On the personal side, it's a lot harder to do, right? Your personal side, you have that first name, last name at Gmail, and you've had that for 10 years, and you got to try and wean yourself off of using that for everything. And then what you want to do is just create an anonymous email address. So what I mean by anonymous email address is, so say for example, I love fast cars at gmail.com. What can you tell about that email address? If I'm somebody telling the truth, I like fast cars, right? With a name like Ferraro, I definitely like fast cars, right? But what you cannot tell about that email address is, you can't tell my name, my gender, my ethnicity, my date of birth, my business. There's no identifying information. It's the type of email address. The cyber criminals see it, they throw it away because it means nothing to them. And if it is involved in a cyber breach, you don't have that personal attachment to it, like first name, last name with Gmail, right? So we just create another anonymous email address, like I hate slow cars at gmail.com, right? So we just want to get you to be more anonymous. And by the way, you guys don't have to be creative on your own because those 2 are taken. But For me, I go a little bit overboard, and I mean, I have an anonymous email address for my online shopping, another for my social media, another for my travel, hotels, airlines, and all those different types of things. And it's actually really easy to manage. In whether you're using Outlook or you're using Apple Mail or whatever it might be, you can just create multiple inboxes in your main inbox, and pretty easy to manage. On my travel things, so it comes into, you know, my hotel reservations, my airline reservations, all that comes into the anonymous email address. I just forward it to my business. You can even create an auto forward. If it's all for travel, you can create an auto forward rule, and it comes to you at the business as well. Now, this is next thing here, not that one. This is a really fast. I'm being challenged today, technology. Come on now. 1, 2, perfect. Okay, let's hold that. That's why I'm gonna set it down. So this is probably the most important thing I'm gonna tell you guys today. One of the most important things. Wherever and whenever you have the opportunity to use two-factor authentication, it's also called multi-factor authentication. Some places call it two-step verification process. Please, please, please use it. In the business, in your businesses, your IT and security teams have to have this turned on, right? Whether it's an employee that's just checking their email, their work email, or you're logging into the network. You have to have two-factor authentication turned on. And a two-factor is not as bad as what it used to be in the past. You know, I know you guys are familiar with this, right? Username, password, you hit enter and you're texted a 6 or an 8-digit code. Today, there's vulnerabilities with that text message, and I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. So a lot of what the bigger companies with two-factor authentication, what they're doing is now they have an authentication app that goes on your phone. So you go to log in, you hit enter, and the app pops up on your phone and says, are you trying to log in? Yes or no. If you click no, it's going to kill that connection, right? And of course, if you're not logging in, you want it to kill the connection. But if you are trying to log in, you click yes. And then on the app, it'll show you 3 numbers, and you have to select the number that's on the screen where you're trying to log in. It's a really good way of two-factor authentication. Please use it. So, and in your personal lives, your banking, your online shopping, your travel, anywhere it's offered to you, please turn it on. And it's not like it used to be years ago. Like people say, hey, Phil, I'm on my phone 50 times a day. I don't want to keep getting authenticated. Well, the newer systems, the more modern systems, they use, I'll give you a couple IT buzzwords, machine learning and artificial intelligence. All that means is the two-factor systems know that Phil always logs in from this cell phone, this laptop, and this tablet, and I always log in from Florida and New York City. My main places. So now if I get up in the morning, I'm gonna go check my work email, I log in, I'm authenticated. Okay, great. Now later in the day, maybe later in the morning or the afternoon, I'm logging in not on my device or from a location that's not mine, I'm definitely gonna get re-authenticated. But if I'm on my own device, my own locations where I'm normally at, I'm not gonna get re-authenticated. So they're much, much better today. So this is the best way to be able to protect all your online accounts. And then the next area, if I don't go too far, there we go, is passwords. All right, so if any of you guys see your password on the screen today, I don't want to know, don't tell me. It's you know, and then I know some others in the group here are saying, come on, Phil, nobody uses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or the word password anymore. Do they? They do. They do. So about every 4 months, I go out and I Google the most hacked passwords in the US. Last time I did it, that was the list that I came up with. I can't believe that people are using passwords like this in today's world, right? I mean, you just look at the news and you can see how many attacks are going on. So the best thing to do is get a slower clicker. There we go. And then, you know, create strong passwords. 8's been the minimum default for many, many years. You want to go 12 or more. You can get to 14 or 16, perfect. And then there's 4 complexity requirements. Oh, on the length, use the name of a song, the name of a book, a passphrase. I'll give you an example of that in the next slide. And then for the complexity, there's 4 requirements: upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and special characters, right? Even if it only says you only need to put 3 in 3 of those 4, put 4 in there, right? And it's just to make you a much better password. Now, here's some examples. All right, so many years ago, I rescued a really great dog named Roxy. She was awesome. And when it came time for me to change my password, like so many people, we use the name of our pets or our children in their passwords. So I'm thinking, okay, Roxy 2013, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, 8 characters, pretty good password, right? No, cracked instantly. The cyber criminals have these really, really good password cracking tools. And what they can do is they can download entire dictionaries into their password cracking tool. It doesn't matter, Spanish, English, Chinese, whatever language that they're targeting that person, right? They can crack these dictionary words right away. So I mentioned a passphrase. Line 2 in a yellow box is an example of a passphrase. Basically says, Roxy goes to school. She never did, but it was a great password. But the problem with a password like that is it's really complicated. It's hard to remember, especially if you have multiple complicated passwords that use an O or 0, the uppercase or lowercase, and all those type of things. So lines 3 and 4 are ways that you guys can create long, complex passwords that are hard to crack, but easy to remember. So line 3, what I did is I just took my old bad 8-character password that I knew really well, and I just doubled it, and I threw some special characters in there. So line 4, I know we always tell people, look, do not reuse the same password on multiple sites. But the reality is people do. I'm sure many of you out here, don't tell me, but I'm sure many of you are reusing the same password on multiple sites. So what you can do is you can take your old bad 8-character password, throw a few special characters in there, and then use one for shopping, one for travel, whatever you want to use it for. But the better way, behind door number 3, there it is, good. Password manager. Anybody using a password manager today? Yes, great. Awesome. Love to see it. Okay, fantastic. So password managers are really great. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of them that are out there today. 4 that we really like are called, and we'll send the names of these product suggestions to you in an email afterwards. I'll get it to Troy, and Troy can send it out to all you guys. So the 4 that we really like on password managers are, one's called LastPass, LASTPASS. Another one is Dashlane, DASHLANE. 1Password, the numeral 1 in the word password. And the 4th one's called Keeper, KEEPER. What's great about the password managers is you only have to remember 1 password. That's your master password that you create, and please make it complex to be able to log into the app. It's just an app. You download it to all your devices. You get an annual subscription. They're very, very inexpensive nowadays. And some of them even offer family plans, so you can put your whole family on. For your businesses, you can get an enterprise version. LastPass, Dashlane, and 1Password all have enterprise versions. I know a lot of businesses that are using these in the business. So if you have an employee that leaves, they leave and they don't know any of the passwords, right? Because it's all controlled by the password manager. So the other things that the password managers will do is they'll do a security check. Let's say that you have saved your own passwords for different websites. It'll check and see if it's a strong password or not. It'll check to see, are you reusing that same password on multiple sites? It'll do that. The 4 that I mentioned, they also integrate with all the latest browsers. So whether it's Safari or Chrome or Edge. And so when you go to log in, if that website is in your account already, the username and password is already pre-populated. Push the button to go enter to log in. And then if you have 2-factor turned on, that works like it normally would. But if that site's not in your account already, then what will happen is you'll have to manually enter the username and password. But these 4 apps, they integrate with your browser. They'll pop up on the screen and say, would you like to add this to your account? So you can incrementally add to your accounts. And the biggest question that I get, I'll tell you the two biggest questions. The least, I'll tell you the biggest. I'll get to that. A lot of people ask me, Phil, when I log in, if I'm using Chrome or I'm using Safari, it pops up on the screen to save the password. Should I do that? No, don't do that, right? Because in both Apple, on the Apple side, it's called Apple Keychain Manager. On the Google Chrome side, it's Google's Password Manager or Chrome Password Manager. They save your passwords in a file on each of your devices. And it's encrypted, but it's really weak encryption. And they're there for convenience. So hackers have a script. The script is already run. So if they get into your system, they run the script. In less than a second, they find that file and they pulled it offline. And then they can crack the encryption on that password file offline. Now they have access to all your passwords. So please use a password manager. Now, the biggest question that I get on password managers, feels it really safe to put all my passwords in this one basket, so to speak, at one password manager application? The short answer with the 4 that I mentioned is yes. And the reason I say yes is because they use the strongest encryption that's available. I don't know if there's any techies in the room. It's AES 256. And then when you create your password, they automatically encrypt it. They don't know what your password is. So there's ways to recover your account, but anyways, remember your password. If you have to write it down and put it in a personal safe, do that, but save your password. Now, separately, they encrypt your account with all the sites you go to, usernames and passwords. Now they take your encrypted password and they use that to re-encrypt your account. That encryption is so strong, hackers would need a supercomputer and a long, long time to even put a dent into. There's no ROI for them to do that. So these four are very, very secure. All right. No, almost did it. There we go. Wi-Fi networks. So a couple things on Wi-Fi networks. I mentioned earlier, these hackers, they're really skilled. They can hack through our websites, our firewalls, and our Wi-Fi routers. So a couple different things you have to do. First of all, in the office, your IT guys do this automatically. They change the default password. At home, I've talked to a lot of people, they think it's plug and play. I call it plug and pray. But it's you have to change the default password. Also, you want to make sure that you change the name of your Wi-Fi router, especially on the main side, so it's a nondescript name. Have you guys been to like apartment buildings and condos, or maybe some of you might live in one, and you go and you see the Jones family, the Smith family, Dan the man, and Tina the princess, right? Everybody knows who those networks belong to. You don't want to advertise, hey, this is my network, see if you can get in and get to my financials, right? I have to laugh because, what day was it? Monday, I think, of this week, I was in St. Louis. I was at a client's office. We're in the conference room with several of their key people and their IT guys. And at the end of the wall there was a big sign. It said Wi-Fi. And it said the name of the business _ guest. And I'm like, God, guys, you got to change that. On your guest network, you want to rename it also nondescript, but take the word guest off, because if a hacker sees it, oh, that's the guest? Oh, let me figure out which one is the main, and then they're going to try and attack that one. What made it worse is, the part that's making me laugh is the general counsel of the organization was sitting there, and he's shaking his head. I said, John, what's wrong? He says, yeah, our main network is named name of the business _ main. So I had main and guest, and I'm like, oh, you got to kid me. IT guy, you got to change that like right away, right? We don't want to advertise our networks, right? And then the other thing that you want to do is the guest network is very, very important. So whether it's in business, of course, you have any visitors that are coming there, you have employees with their personal devices, they go on to the guest network. If you have an employee who wants to check his or her Gmail or Facebook or whatever, you don't know if that device is compromised, if it has malware or virus on it, right? So employees on their personal devices go on the guest network. Now at home, the guest network is very, very important. If any of you have children that are on the internet that love to do online gaming, my son did gaming. He's probably still doing online gaming all the way through college. He was a big time gamer. He was always on my guest network. And I'll tell you why, because these online gaming sites, so many hackers in there, whether they're trying to hack the game or hack other players, happens all the time. I gave the same presentation about 8 or 9 months ago to a client. They called me up 2 months after that in a panic. Phil, we did everything you said, but we didn't do the Wi-Fi. It's a little more technical, a little harder to do. We just didn't get to it. Their 14-year-old daughter was a gamer. Her online account was hacked, and she was on the main network, and they were panicking that their financials, the hackers were going to get to the financials. So we dropped everything, took care of them, got them taken care of. But these things happen. The other thing that goes on your guest network at home is all your internet connected devices, right? The billions of things. We call it the Internet of Things. Things like your security systems and your security cameras. Maybe your smart TVs that connect to Netflix and all these streaming services. Oh, there's your Peloton, there's your Mirror, Google, Nest, Alexa, Ring, on and on and on. All these internet convenience devices, they go on your network, on your guest network, because so many of them have been hacked in the past. They could get hacked again. And if they do, we don't want the hackers to be able to use it as a pivot to get to your main network and all your personals, right? So keep that separation. And there's a misperception that the guest network is slower than the main. It's not. It's the same Wi-Fi router. It's the same internet connection speed coming in, all the same speed. Just give your home network a little more safety and protection. Public Wi-Fi. Anybody using public Wi-Fi? I hope not. Maybe? Yes? Uh-oh. All right, let me tell you. Public Wi-Fi is inherently dangerous, and here's why. The cyber criminals like to set up these fake Wi-Fi access points on places where people congregate. Hotels, airports, train stations, like you see the example on the screen. Starbucks Wi-Fi and then Starbuck. And the second one, they've taken the second S out of the name. Or one tactic that they like to use a lot is they'll use a real name and they'll put free at the end. Hey, who doesn't like free Wi-Fi? And if you connect to the hacker's fake website, you'll get to the internet. They want you to get out to the internet because they have a tool, they call it a sniffer, because it literally captures every single keystroke that you type. So that website, the username, the password, they capture it all. So the best thing to do is to get an unlimited data plan on your cell phone, and they're not that expensive. You can put your whole family on an unlimited data plan nowadays, and it's very, relatively inexpensive. And then if you need to connect, you're away from the home and office, you need to connect your tablet or your laptop, go to settings, hotspot, and connect to your hotspot. All right, make sure it's password protected though. And that'll keep you secure. That connection from your cell phone back to your provider, completely encrypted, and and it's safe. And the speeds are going to be the same as Wi-Fi. So it's all going to work out a lot better. Now, there may be a couple of circumstances where you actually have to use public Wi-Fi. Maybe there's no cellular signal at all. So I've been in hotels before with all the concrete and steel, you just can't get a good signal. Or you're on an airplane, right? Or maybe you have like one bar and it's really slow. So in those circumstances, and there's public Wi-Fi available, go ahead and connect to the public Wi-Fi, and then immediately start a personal VPN, virtual private network. I would say probably a majority of you have used VPNs during the pandemic, right, to work from home. So they have personal applications, a lot of good ones out there. Nord, N-O-R-D, Viper, V-Y-P-R, Express, just like it sounds, the XPRSS, and TorGuard, T-O-R-G-U-A-R-D. Oh, there's a fifth one called Tunnel Bear, right? So Tunnel Bear, those 5 are all really good. And which is, again, it's an app, get an annual subscription, download it to your devices. On mine, I have an auto run on all my devices. Like on my home office network, I have, firewall monitoring equipment on my network just to make sure it's safe. I have my personal VPN auto run all the time on all my devices. And there's no degradation in service. There's no latency or anything like that. So I have my VPN running, and then I log into my office on a virtual desktop infrastructure. It's like a corporate type of, maybe you've heard of Citrix. It's like that, right? And I log into that, and then I'm inside there and I'm doing a Zoom session. And there's no latency. So I got VPN into a VPN and no latency. So they're really, really good. And it's really the best way. You're on an airplane. I'll be on one early tomorrow morning. And when I get up to 10,000 feet, right, obviously my cell phone's not working. So I'll use the airline's Wi-Fi. I'll connect to that. I'll start my VPN, and then I can do my work. Everything is protected and secure. All right, let's see. So I want to do a couple of exercises right here quickly. The first one here is to see if your device is broadcasting your name everywhere that you go. I'm sure we probably have a mix of Android users and iPhone users. So Android users is a little bit different from device to device. So just look for your settings and then see where it says about the phone and how your device is named. It could be Samsung G22 or letters and numbers, things like that. iPhone users, if you want to take out your phone and go ahead and log into it, all right, and then when you log in, make sure you click on the settings. Instructions are on the screen as well. Click on settings, scroll down a little bit to see general. Click on general. At the top, it says about. Click on about. At the top again, it says name. So go ahead and you can click on the name. You can see how your device is named. So currently on iPhones, it just says iPhone or iPhone and a version number. Previous version of iPhone, iOS, had first name, and iPhone version before that had first name, last name, and then iPhone. So regardless of, even if it just says iPhone or it just says Samsung G22, and now you're going to start using your hotspot, go ahead and rename your device. Again, something nondescript, doesn't identify you, but you know that it's your phone. And then this way, if you're logging into your hotspot, right, because there could be 2 or 3 other iPhones or Samsungs or whatever around. And so you want to make sure that you're logging in or trying to log into your device, right? So we don't want to broadcast your name, because if you're broadcasting your name on this, then, someone can Google the name. They go, oh, it's that person right there. Right? They can get a little bit closer, start listening to your conversations. Oh, you got a business conversation? Now they start capturing all this information and they set you up for an attack. All right. So again, I want to keep you more anonymous online. All right. Next exercise here. I find this next exercise very interesting. I've had a lot of clients tell me that it's not interesting. It's scary. And that's if your phone is tracking to you everywhere that you go. So we have Android users here in the audience today or on Zoom. Google tracks you back from the day you created your Gmail account on that device. 5 years, 10 years. I was talking to a client last week. And he says, yeah, I said, well, every month or so I get an email from Google and it tells me everywhere I've been in the last month, the hotels, the cities, the restaurants, all that stuff. Yeah, they're tracking all that information on you. They know, I mean, a lot of times you probably get a pop-up on your message, oh, 17 minutes to home or whatever, 23 minutes to get to the office. They capture all this information everywhere that you go. And they sell that information. On iPhones, Apple only tracks you back 90 days, but Apple does something interesting that I want to show it to you. So iPhone users, if you want to go through this, instructions are on the screen, click on settings again, scroll down a little bit farther this time, you see privacy. It's the white hand in the blue box, click on privacy. At the very top, it says location services, click on that. Now, when you're in location services, you got to scroll all the way to the very, very bottom. It's the very last item, and it says system services, click on that. Now scroll past that first group of services until you see, and most of them are green, that's okay, right? And it'll say significant locations. Click on that, might ask for Face ID or to log in. Now, when you get into significant locations, you're gonna see one of two things. In the middle of the screen, it's either gonna say summary and then a number of records, or it'll say history and show you all the cities that you've been to in the last 90 days. You can click on a city, you can drill down, you click on a city, map opens up, little blue circle of everywhere you've been in the city. The history is now the street name. You click on the street name, gives you a map with a big blue circle exactly where you were at. And now the history shows the time you arrived to the minute, the time you left to the minute, and how long it took you to get there. There's no reason Apple needs all this detailed tracking information on everywhere you go down to the minute, right? Your homes, your offices, your clients, your children's homes, whatever, right? They're capturing all this information. So we want to turn this off. So if you had that with the cities and you can drill down, click back to in the beginning of significant locations. Now, if you're at on your significant locations, if you just said summary and a number of records, they're still capturing all that information. We just don't know where they're storing it yet. Hackers will find it and be able to get to it. So in either case, what we want to do is we want to turn off significant locations. So in that upper right corner, slide that to the left, turn the green to gray, turn off significant locations. If you're using maps, GPS applications, Find My iPhone, all that still works because location services is turned on. Significant locations is just turning off the detail down to the minute, tracking on you. If you want to click on clear history in blue at the bottom, please go ahead and do that. It'll clear out the history. If you click on clear history and you get an error message, it just means that the phone's tracking you at this moment. And when you go out and come back in again, it'll be cleared out. Okay. Let's keep moving. Okay. This is something else that's, I don't know, interesting. We've seen a lot of this over the last several months, and that's called mobile device takeover. Some of you may have heard it called SIM swapping. It's basically what the cybercriminals want to do is they want to forward all your calls and text messages from your phone to theirs. They do this in a number of different ways. I'll talk about the two most popular. So first of all, they have your phone number. And so on the internet, they can figure out who your provider is, Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, whoever it is, right? And what they do is they go to that online website. So I'll pick on Verizon today. They go to verizonwireless.com, put your phone number in, try and hack your password. Let's say you had one of those 10 passwords on there, just a weak password. They go in, they go to the management console, they turn on call forwarding, text message forwarding. You might not even notice it. You're busy at work, you're like, I'm not getting any texts or calls today. Oh well, and you're back to work. Or let's say you've got a strong password, or better yet, you're using one of those password managers that I mentioned to you. The next thing they'll do is they'll go into the phone store and they'll use social engineering, and they'll talk about, they'll have a fake driver's license, maybe a fake utility bills, and they will try and get the person in the store to be able to transfer your line. Technically, it's called porting, right? And so then they'll port your number over. And if they're successful at that, the next thing that they'll do is they'll log into your bank account, and they'll try multiple banks because they know people use more than one bank, and they won't try and hack your password because most people have two-factor authentication on their bank sites, or they should. So what they do then is then they won't do a password hack, they'll do a password reset, because now that one-time password, or if it's set up for phone call, comes to them. They reset your password, they log in, and they do a small wire transfer to their bank. Now they've established their bank as somebody that you send money to, and they go back in and they do the large thing. So a few things you can do: call your mobile service provider, say turn on do not port, no porting service. It should be on by default, but it's not, so do that. Identify yourself as an account manager so that only you can make a change to it, and the account manager should set up a verbal PIN or a passcode, right? So that's, and then turn on two-factor authentication for the website. Okay, antivirus. Last couple of topics here. I'm going to go through them really quick. Antivirus. All your devices need antivirus. Doesn't matter if it's an Apple, a Mac, a Windows, whether it's a workstation, a tablet, a laptop, a cell phone. We always do the workstations and laptops. We forget about tablets and cell phones, right? So all your devices need antivirus. A lot of good products out there: McAfee, Norton, Sophos, Bitdefender, right? Make sure you have on all your devices. And this stops that drive-by download. Most times stops the drive-by download I talked about earlier. Social engineering, less is more. Please don't post information. The cyber criminals are not only looking at you as the principals in your business, they're looking at you and your family members. And so if you have children, family members that are posting on social media, they're going to create a fake persona, follow them, and then try and get information from them about what you're doing in the business, and then set your business up for attack. All right, last, almost there. Last topic: freezing your credit. The best way to protect against identity theft is to call the 3 major credit reporting agencies: TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, or you can go online, tell them you want to freeze your credit. They have you set up a verbal PIN or passcode. Cyber criminals will go out, they gather up information about you on the internet, and they can try and apply for dozens of credit cards, open up bank accounts in your name. These businesses have to do a credit check on you. If they can't run a credit check, they can't issue the account. Right, so that's the best way to be able to protect yourself. There's a lot of great services out there like LifeLock. I think they're a sponsor here as well, and other similar type services. These services are great. They let you know when something has happened, but to me, it's after the fact. So you want to be proactive and secure your credit. All right, my 3 takeaways for you today: be more anonymous online, protect your online financial accounts, and protect your devices. You do these things, you'll make yourself that hard target and make the cyber criminals go to the soft target. So with that, we have some cyber educational materials that are going to be uploaded to the portal, right? And you'll be able to download then ones like the cyber top 10 tips. And one of them is like a 25-page document that has all these things that I've been talking about. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, and be cyber safe.